Sidelines. We are broadcasting live in Oxford and already getting a lot of chatter from the Keghead, Matheny, and Perkins and all those guys. You're in the greatest college town in America, Bobby. I'm definitely in one of them. Oxford, Mississippi. We're at the Vitamin Shoppe, one of our sponsors, Justin Ross, Matt Price. This is their second location. They've got the first one, 5338 Goodman Road in Olive Branch, Mississippi. And that one's open Monday through Saturday, 9:30 a.m. to 8 p.m. Sundays, 10:30 a.m. to 7 p.m. Same hours, this location. We're right over here off of Jackson Avenue in the Oxford Galleria, right next to Dick's Sporting Goods. 3,800 square feet. We got in here last night, set everything up, Brendan. And this one has everything. They've also got Justin is one of the employees, the health specialist, and also Ada. And they've got supplements. They've got probiotics. They've got, pre-workout, post-workout. They've got everything that you need to live a good, healthy life. And remember, about 80% of it's diet anyway. So we'll talk to them during the show. And I know a lot of the Ole Miss players are coming out today. I think it's part of the NIL deal that they have, but they'll be here. The mayor and all are going to be here for ribbon cutting and a grand opening of the business. We got Frank Duffy, Mr. LSU, Go Tigers, going to join us here in just a minute. Dave Tompkins from the Low Country in South Carolina will check in with us as well. Roll Tide. And then Doug Dean checks in with us. We're going to kind of do the Saturdays, Savant Saturday on Friday. So we're going to cover a lot of SEC football and basketball, a lot of topics to cover. Brendan Martin, our producer, is in the studio in Ocala. So look, get pen and paper handy and smash that subscribe button in the bottom right-hand corner. It is so easy. Even my 95-year-old father and Jethro Bodine can do it. So if they can do it, you can do it. Brendan, anything else we want to add on there other than don't mess with the settings and stuff like that on a Mac Air Pro? Like
you're just grounded, Rob. That's all. You're grounded.
I'm grounded.
You're grounded.
I can touch the buttons, but
you're grounded.
Hang in there and let's get going. We'll be right back.
Sidelines with Rob Browne. Talk sporty to me.
All right, man. We're here in Oxford, and I'm telling you, Frank, I love it. The background there. No, are you in New Orleans? That looks like New Orleans.
No, I'm actually here in Big Canoe. I'm up here in the North Georgia mountains for a couple more days, and Ron and I go for our first trip to Cabo San Lucas, which I've never been to, which I'm looking forward to it.
That's between Montgomery and Birmingham, isn't it?
Pretty much. That's right. If you've gone to Eufaula, you've gone too far.
That's right.
A lot of peaches there.
That's right. That's right. Clanton, Alabama, the peach capital of Alabama. Hey, look, Dave Tompkins, Frank Duffy. Doug's going to join us about half past the hour. We got into Oxford last night. God almighty. I've been down here. I've been to 52 football games. I keep these savant statistics in my head, and y'all have all been to Oxford. It is an awesome college town, and we're driving around this morning, going down Lamar, and there's William Faulkner's home, and it really is, and we're going up to the square after the show, but we are at the Vitamin Shoppe. My friend Justin Ross, I've known a long time, go to church with him at St. Louis Catholic Church in Memphis, and this is their second location. And they're going to be bringing a lot of the Ole Miss players out. And if we get a chance to, we'll put them on the firing line with us and talk to them. Because one thing I know about y'all and Doug and Brendan knows is we know the SEC. We cover college football and college basketball and sports in the South like kudzu and cotton. And this is an awesome location. I mean, this 3,800 square feet in here, and it is a brand new. The mayor is going to be out here. They probably have a band, proclamations from the governor. I thought that was for Sidelines being here. But anyway, I'll get started.
Well, speaking of the mayor, I've asked the mayor of Beaufort for everyone to drive around at 18 miles an hour today, or all around Beaufort.
That's right. We were driving around last night, went by the Sigma New house, just showing her around 18-mile-an-hour speed limit. You got to love it. All right, let's get started here right now. And I got to ask both of y'all, it's hard to believe it's still winter. It's March 1st. College football season, spring practice is kicking off everywhere around us. We got the draft. The combine is underway right now. And we got college baseball kicking off. There's all kind of softball tournaments. I can't believe we got a hotel room here at the Hilton, but we did. There's also basketball, a hell of a basketball race. And, you're Alabama. You're a West Point grad. You follow Stanford, Dave. Frank, go Tigers. I got to think the job being done by your coach at LSU. They've won 3 of their last 4 games by 1 point. And Matt McMahon, when he came from Murray State, he basically lost his roster and had to start from scratch.
Nobody, zero, no players whatsoever. And I tell you what they've done the last 2 weeks, beating South Carolina on the road, beating Kentucky on Dale Brown Court. And then the last game against Georgia, it was almost the mirror image of their first game that I drove over and actually watched in Athens. It was the last second win by Georgia a month ago, and then LSU turned the tables on them this time. But I'm very excited with what Coach Mack's doing. And if you look at our last 3 games, the 3 bottom dwellers are the SEC. And if we get a little lucky and win a game or 2 at the tournament, we're in discussions. A week and a half, 2 weeks ago, I would have said, okay, we'll be happy with the NIT. I'm not saying we're getting in with 18 wins, but we're in the discussion. And let me tell you, we're a tough out right now. You draw us in the SEC tournament, you're going to have your hands full.
Most selection committees in the past years have put a lot of emphasis on the last 10 games. Yeah. And if you're putting emphasis on the last 10 games and you're saying, who are the best 37 or however many at-large teams get in, LSU gets in. I think they get in over the school where Rob is today. LSU's got to win out there. I think they have to finish undefeated in the SEC regular season and win at least 2 games in the SEC tournament. And I think they have a good chance of getting in.
Yeah, and beating Ole Miss in a good game in Baton Rouge early in the season, I think will go a long way as well.
Well, and LSU's got one of the candidates for SEC Player of the Year. So, I just think this is year 3. And it surprises me when we talk to the guys that cover LSU. In addition to Frank, we'll bring on Scott Rabelais, Jimmy Ott, Jacques Doucet from WAFB Channel 9. The Tigers have only been to the tournament 7 or 8 times in the last 25 years. Yeah, I just cannot. I guess we all grew up as kids. Pete Maravich played. And somebody sent me a text this morning. It was, I know who it is. Ron Ingram wrote an article in Baton Rouge about, Caitlin Clark will never compare to Pete Maravich.
Apples and oranges.
Yeah.
Apples and oranges. Because let me tell you, I had a bar at LSU. Shocking that I would actually have owned a bar at LSU, I managed other bars leading up to the bar I owned. Well, one of the bars that I managed, we literally found the old Cow Palace floor, which was in the old, called the Cow Palace. It was the ad center where Pete Maravich used to play. Where we play now in the PMAC, which I basically just heard they're gonna raise and then put another arena in there. I just heard that yesterday. Yeah, but this was the Maravich Center was the house that Pete built, the Assembly Center, right? But the old floor at the Cow Palace where Pete played, I wound up finding that, and I made a bar out of it. It was donated to a high school. I stripped their colors off of it and made it in my bar. But the old white stripe of mid-court for the Cow Palace, I was able to save, and I put it on the bar, and I put a plaque by it, which it says it all. Pete Maravich averaged 44.2 points a game for his career and he had no 3-point line.
Yeah.
That is staggering. That is numbers that will never, ever be approached. And he did it in one last year because don't forget, freshmen couldn't play.
Right.
You couldn't play. You couldn't play on the freshman team. In fact, the freshman squad, when Pete was a freshman, had more people at the games than the varsity games until he got into the varsity.
Well, and then that was, Dave, he referenced, and Brendan, he referenced finally the old barn that they had at LSU. Well, Frank was in attendance September of 1996, as was I and Billy Roberts and a lot of people the night the Auburn barn burned down. Now, Frank, I'm not asking you to confess now, but you can do it. None of us left the stadium, by the way. The flames were coming over.
No one moved. No, that was the crazy part. I literally could feel the heat from that fire. And I was in the upper deck on the other side of that same side, but on the other end of the stadium. I could feel the heat. And the craziest thing, the silhouette of people were still standing. Auburn has that ledge up top where you can walk up there and stand, if you want a little bit more room. And when I tell you, I can still see the people standing silhouetted against the flames that had to be 6 stories high.
Yes.
And no one moved.
Yeah.
No one moved.
Nobody moved. Dave,
I had a cold. Hey, Rob, I had a cold camp that day. There was no cooking going on at the Duffy Jeep.
And somebody, when we walked out, by the way, Dave, every vehicle around the barn had been burned down to the hubs, to the wheel hubs. And there were all these people going, that LSU fellow over there was cooking a weenie dog. It was him that did it.
If you exclude Kentucky, and say, okay, who's the best team ever in the SEC? I would say clearly the Florida back-to-back national championship teams.
Yeah.
But then you say who have had the most talented teams? That 70s LSU team with Duran Macklin, Dwayne Scales, Al Green, Ethan Martin, the Cookie Monster. Green. I mean, that was an amazing team. Early 90s team with Shaq, Stanley Roberts, Chris. He's changed his name. I forget the guard.
Jackson.
Those are the most talented teams that the SEC has seen outside of Kentucky, in my opinion.
The Reverend Al Green.
The
Reverend Al Green was on that LSU basketball team.
And don't forget Wayne Sims, one of the best, number 6 man. No, Dale had his runs. We had a run in the late 70s. In fact, we had the dubious task in the tournament of losing to the eventual champion 3 out of 4 years. Lost to Michigan State. We lost, of course, to Indiana, who went on to win it in 81. And of course, we had that nice run in 86 when we had Nervous, Purvis, Ellison. We had them down by 11 points. We had Louisville down by 11 at halftime of the semifinal game and just couldn't finish the drill. And my good buddy, John Brady, who I just talked to the other night, he had the Tigers there in 06 with Brendan. Florida team was there.
Correct.
And we wound up drawing UCLA, who had the best guard play I think I've ever seen in a semifinal. We were done by like 10 minutes to go. I was like already starting to figure out. And by the way, Rob, you'll get a kick out of this. It was my very first RV trip ever in Bengal 1. That was my very first trip, was to that Final Four. I parked it on a city street up there. I still to this day I don't know how I wedged it in. I was literally about 2 blocks from the arena, not realizing that you can't do stuff like that. You can't park it on city streets.
Parallel parking, Bengal 1.
That's right, up in Indianapolis.
Throw this one to
Frank's
Brendan.
operating a little faster than 18 miles an hour today. Frank's
absolutely.
He's turbo.
I gotta grab something. Y'all talk.
Brendan, you mentioned something. Brendan, that 06-07 Florida teams back to back. And you're right. No other SEC team. Well, Kentucky did it. 96 and 97 at the end of Pitino in the first year of Tubby Smith.
Pitino's last year and Tubby Smith's first year.
Yeah, I was going to say 96, 97.
96 and 98. The Kentucky won in 96.
So
Arizona won in 97, beat Kentucky, and then Tubby won in 98.
So, Brendan, Florida's the only SEC team to ever do back-to-back national championships in college basketball, as he drinks a serious energy throb drink there, whatever that is. I've had no coffee this morning, no Bailey's, no nothing. But
well,
Brendan,
this is my Rob equalizer. This is my.
there you go.
I'm fueled by Celsius. If anybody wants to sponsor me,
Fueled by
Hey,
Celsius.
And Rob, speaking of basketball, I don't think this regular season is done yet for the SEC.
No.
Tennessee. Do you see who Tennessee has to play the last 3 games? They got to play at Alabama. They got to play at, I think, South Carolina and Kentucky.
South Carolina and Kentucky, yeah. They've got by far the hardest road. Auburn has the easiest road.
And Alabama doesn't have an easy one either. Do not be shocked. And look who's laying in the weeds. Auburn. Auburn has the easiest of the road. I think Auburn's going to win these next 3 games, or they should be heavy favorites in all of them. And don't sleep on Brennan's Gators. They're laying back two back. So you literally could see before this thing's over a 2-3 way tie at the top for the regular season, which is going to totally throw in disarray the seedings for what's I think is going to be one of the best SEC tournaments in recent history in Nash Vegas. I think it's going to be a fabulous tournament because everybody's playing really good ball, and everyone, really the top 6 teams, all have a real legitimate case that they can make it, as the SEC champion.
Well, the team to look out for, or who should be wary, is Mississippi State. Yeah, they're at Auburn, at Texas A&M, and then hosting South Carolina. They could lose all 3 of those.
Absolutely.
That puts them at 8-10, and that might put your Bengal Tigers in the tournament.
Well, this one. The one that, when you think about it, in this stretch, Dalton Connect, is he a modern day Larry Bird? The guy, he had 39 points against Auburn. He outscored Auburn in the last 7 minutes, 25-21. He was hitting up, and then Santiago Vescovi, who's been at Tennessee for 11 years. I think he's from Argentina or Uruguay. And then Zakai Ziegler, the point guard. This guy is Mr. Assist. This looks to be the most opportunistic Tennessee team. I don't know if it's the most talented team, but when you talk to Tennessee fans, they will say, well, Rick Barnes, when he gets into the tournament, we don't do much. I think the SEC, and let's just bounce this around, top to bottom. And we are broadcasting live from the Vitamin Shoppe in Oxford, Mississippi. Folks, if you hadn't been to Oxford lately, get your rear end down here. We're right out here in the Oxford Galleria. You can't miss it, located right next to Dick's Sporting Goods, 3,800 square feet. We'll be talking with one of the owners, Matt Price, here shortly when he comes over here. I got to say, top to bottom, I haven't remembered the SEC being this good. Missouri is bad, but they're still bringing in 3 of the top 100 kids in the country for next year. Vanderbilt, I question their commitment to winning. And I think the SEC, with 16 teams in here now, you're going to have a lot of money, but we need to start testing schools' commitment to winning in sports and determining how much we give them in the annual revenue sharing. If you're just sitting around just waiting for the handout, we got enough of that, okay? But top to bottom, Frank, do you ever remember the league being this strong?
No, not in basketball. Not 6 or 7 deep as it is now. And you've got the 8th and 9th and 10th place teams who can sneak up on people. Yeah, I mean, it has been a fascinating, in my opinion, it's been a fascinating season to watch this. And I'm telling you, Tennessee, I don't think they're going to make that number 1 seed. I really don't. And I'm not sure Alabama's going to get it. I'm telling you, Kentucky, Florida, Auburn, or South Carolina, you watch. Even though they're down 2 games with 3 to play, there's going to be some crazy things that happen in the next week and a half. You watch.
Absolutely. I think top to bottom, the SEC is it's a wash with the Big 12. I think they're 1A and 1B, and you can make an argument for either one. I think both conferences have 3 teams that have Final Four potential. Yeah. I think in the SEC, I think in the following order, it's Kentucky, Tennessee, Auburn. But Kentucky could lose in the first round of the tournament. You never know. If they face a Colgate or Princeton, they might get bounced. I don't think Alabama has Final Four potential because they only play one way, and a good game coach can take them out of their game. And, as we saw last year and we see every year since, the 1940s.
And don't sleep on Auburn.
Even though the Big East is only going to put 4 teams in the tournament, I think all 4 of the Big East teams can make the Final Four. Connecticut, Seton Hall, Marquette, and who am I missing? Creighton. But I think the Big East may go the farthest, but I think the best 2 conferences are the SEC and the Big 12.
Absolutely. And don't sleep on Auburn. Auburn's a 24-1 to win the tournament. I love that. I love that number. Auburn's sneaky good. Now look, they didn't show up against Tennessee. That was a bad performance. But I'm telling you, you get 7. I think we're going to get probably 7, hopefully 8 teams into the tournament.
Yeah.
And you're right, Dave. Kentucky, for a quote unquote off Kentucky year, good luck playing them. But you're right, they're undisciplined, and if they get up against one of those St. Peter's, like Princeton, one of these really disciplined sort of teams, that always gives Kentucky's fits in that second round. But do not sleep on Auburn coming through this year. I'm telling you, I think them sitting back there in that 4th spot.
I think if Kentucky can get it to the second weekend, I think they go to the Final Four. They're the most talented team in the country. Don't turn your back on Florida. I mean, Florida's playing tremendous basketball right now. I think they can get to the Sweet 16 or the Elite 8. It's just, it's March 1st. I'm just giddy because this is the month. And
let me throw something at you. And Frank, you talked about that Auburn Tennessee game, and you listened to Bruce Pearl's comments and watching on SEC Network yesterday morning. They had the stats wrong. They had Auburn at 9-5 or something like that. They're not. They're there at. They've lost 5 games though. They're 10-5. But I thought the SEC champion early on would end up 13-5 or 14-4. But if you look at Auburn, that game was a 4-point game in the last minute and a half or so.
Yeah.
But what made Dalton connect, that was the difference. I mean, he is that good of a player, transferred from Brendan's former college, University of Northern Colorado. Say it.
Go Bears.
Go Bears. But he's that good of a player when apparently, and I tell you a guy that I want to get on the show is Ron Slay. I didn't realize Ron is from Memphis. Remember, he was SEC Player of the Year at Tennessee in basketball in 2003, and he had a long, distinguished career playing overseas all over the world, but he's a great basketball mind. And he talked about Bruce Pearl. If you listen to his comments, he goes, Bruce Pearl wants to play tomorrow. He is that competitive. But I thought Jalen Williams coming in after the injury, it wasn't as bad as thought in the Kentucky game. They played a full 40, but Tennessee, this is a really good Tennessee team, but you're right. Here's one. Let's get to the Gators now. And
absolutely.
I want to talk about Todd Golden. You know what he did? Franz Beard, and Brendan talked about this. He came up to Franz Beard the other night at the basketball game. This is what he did as a coach. You don't see this much nowadays. Asked him how he was doing, how his mom and dad are doing, about his parents. He goes, how did he even know that? I already like this guy because of that. I mean, Todd Golden's, he may be the golden child in basketball.
Well, I'll tell you, Florida had Alabama beat in Tuscaloosa.
Yeah.
They could have won that game. I watched every minute of that game. And down the end, they rushed their shot late. They shouldn't have done it. They should have played for the last shot, and they didn't. And I gave Alabama the opportunity to go down and score, put it in overtime, and then, of course, they got beat in overtime. Florida manages that last minute better, and those tables are turned. That's a big 2-game swing between Alabama and Florida. If Florida hangs on to that game, we're talking a whole different scenario without Alabama being tied in the regular season right now.
Yeah,
and Florida has a pretty easy road the rest of the way. They're at South Carolina. I think they can win that game tomorrow.
Yeah, I do.
They host Alabama. I think they will. I mean, here I am talking against my school, but I think they'll beat Alabama, and they're at Vandy. So I think they go 2-1 worse, but very likely 3-0.
Go 3-0.
Yeah.
Hi,
There's a good comment in here from George who just said, and I was about to say the same thing. He says, I think thanks our guards, we have a chance against anyone. And I think that's true. Zion Poland's, pretty talented guy.
Yeah.
And what Todd Golden has done this year is what I like about Todd Golden is he's as a basketball guy. He really focuses on, how to win the game. And he outlined early on when in January when Florida lost to Kentucky because they couldn't finish, and he walked off the court and he said, we should have won that game. I expected to win that game, and then they went to work on finishing. And I think that Florida's peaking at the right time. I think their team is gelling at the right time. They're healthy and they've got the momentum right now. And I think that is, as we all know, that's what you want this time of year. This is what you want to see. And, and I have to say this because we've talked about this, a lot in the last week, but watch out for Kentucky because you just can't count them out with experience. And it's like I always said, it's like, Tiger Woods talked about the first time he ever teed off when he was playing, he's playing at the Masters. And a lot of these guys talk, I always refer to them as golf, but it's like, they can have a hard time drawing the club back, right? Because they're so nervous, because it matters if you haven't been there before. And I think that's what the dance is all about, right?
Yeah.
So I just can't count out Kentucky because they can just put it all together and just run the table.
Kentucky owns the 6 inches between most teams' ears.
Absolutely.
Well, and I think all Kentucky needs is some floor leadership. I think there's 2 types of coaches in college basketball. There's system coaches and then there's game coaches.
Right.
I think people like Nate Oates, he's a system coach. And I think the best system coaches are also really good recruiters and get the athletes to fit into their systems. I think Florida has a great game coach. The Big East coaches are great game coaches, and what they do is they look at Tom Izzo is a great game coach, and they just look at the game in front of them and how to win that game. And how to value every possession and make the other team uncomfortable. And I think, by and large, those teams do best in the tournament. But when you have a great system coach or in system program like Kentucky, they get a little floor leadership, they get a little moxie, they get a little confidence, momentum, they can go all the way because they have so much more talent than pretty much any team they're going to play.
I know they're disappointing this year, but Musselman's a coach like that too. He
is. And that's something both of y'all and all 3 of y'all just have pointed out, the systems coach versus the game coaches. I always marvel, and I'm sure y'all do too, when you watch these Big East teams, it's that street ball, the way they play the basketball. It's just, it's a cultural game up there of great guard play. And I was going to say, y'all make a comparison in the guard play of Florida and the guard play of Kentucky with what Shepherd's doing right now, because they are the most talented team. And Frank's right. Kentucky walks through most people's minds with their dirty blue basketball feet, and there's not a damn thing you can do about it because they're damn Kentucky. But I like the thing about the systems coach too, about Nate Oates. It's like in football. You get a team that beats everybody by 40 points, and all of a sudden they get into a tight game where it's the mental acuity is involved. They struggle. This is a brilliant observation from this basketball panel. And we're broadcasting live from the Vitamin Shoppe in Oxford, Mississippi. Brand new one. And it's opening today. The ribbon cutting. The mayor will be here. Proclamation from the governor. The Vitamin Shoppe, 3,800 square feet, Oxford, Mississippi. I've also got another location in in Olive Branch, Mississippi, on Goodman Road, 5338 Goodman Road. But Matt Price, Justin Ross, the Vitamin Shoppe, they have everything you need. The supplements, workout, post-workout, probiotics. They have people here that actually know what they're doing. They have a very skilled, educated, well-trained staff. Proud to have them as a sponsor. Dave and Frank, I got to ask y'all about the guard play, though. And you look at, say, Hurley's team up at Connecticut.
Yeah.
UConn, he's a great game coach. Now, they've lost a few games. Nobody's going to go undefeated, and you're going to get drilled on the road. But I think about UConn. I think about Creighton, Marquette, the Big East. The SEC's got to be one of the 2, maybe 3 along with the Big 12 and the Big East. How do y'all rank them? I rank it Big 12, SEC, well, Big 12, SEC, or Big 12, Big East.
Big 12 a little bit higher, SEC right below it.
Okay.
Yeah, I think the Big East may send the most teams to the Elite Eight and Final Four just because of the game coaching. I think a great example, past comparison, is Jay Wright when he was at Villanova versus Roy Williams when he was at North Carolina. Roy won more national championships. He won 3, Jay won 2, more games, higher winning percentage, better athletes. But when those two teams would meet late in March, Jay Wright always won because he was a better game coach. North Carolina had a more successful program, but Jay Wright was the better game coach. I think that's so there you have 2 Hall of Fame coaches, and you compare them, and you can't say that Jay Wright is a better coach because North Carolina had a better basketball program. But in a head-to-head matchup, Jay Wright was normally going to beat Roy Williams.
When the whiteboard's in his hand.
Hey, I watched something on ACC Network. I referenced this yesterday. West Durham, have y'all seen this? It's Roy Williams and Coach K on a court, and there's a crowd, people in the stands watching this. I mean, wow. The ACC, SEC, you're right. This is an incredible time of year. Look, a week from tomorrow night, we're going to wrap up the regular season unless there's a game on that last Sunday. But then we start the SEC tournament. You know what I can hear every time Kentucky wins another basketball game? Cha-ching. The cost of hotel rooms in Nashville just going through the roof. Just going through. They call it Catville because they and I was just going to say, there's no stopping them.
When we used to have it here in Atlanta every year, at the Georgia Dome, it was Catlanta. I mean, it was blue everywhere.
Yeah, they call it Catlanta.
Let me tell you,
whether it's for Louisville or for Kentucky, the entire cities of Louisville and Lexington, they travel to wherever their teams are playing basketball. I mean, you look at I-64, which connects Louisville and Lexington. And on game day or a couple days before game day, I mean, it's a parking lot because they're going to watch their basketball teams play. Right. Kind of like us, down in Alabama and Mississippi with football. But it's something up there.
Well, it is. And living in Memphis, my God, when Louisville comes to play the University of Memphis, the Tigers at the Coliseum, the Pyramid, now the FedEx Forum, they bring, no lie, 10, maybe a dozen chartered buses. And visiting teams don't get many tickets. That I'm talking about for a regular season game. And growing up with the Memphis-Louisville rivalry.
Oh, that rivalry was a great rivalry. Yeah. That goes back to the Keith Lee and William Bedford days. I mean, that's a fabulous rivalry.
Yeah, it really does. And I
Dr.
think that
Duncanstein.
Yeah,
Daryl Griffith.
You mentioned Never Nervous Purvis Ellison from Savannah, Georgia, 1986. I'm getting off the boat in Bimini at spring break. We sailed out there, went through the Bermuda Triangle, and I'm just going to be completely transparent. We lost all radio contact out there. I'm not sure if the captains were messing with us or not, and we were all really hungover from the night before in the Intercoastal Waterway there in Hollywood, Florida. But we got out there, and we're watching that Auburn-Louisville game in this bar called Hemingway's there in Bimini. And we were having some, we were pretty liquored up. But it went down to the last few minutes. Louisville ended up winning that national championship. They got LSU, they got Auburn. And I'm going to tell you what, you never forget when a team that you follow goes deep in the tournament. And now, Dave, don't be too hard on Alabama because Alabama – really, winning-wise, they've got great tradition with that. It's getting to that Final Four.
It's crazy they've never been to a Final Four.
It's so bewildering. They've only been to one Elite Eight when Mark Gottfried was their coach.
It's crazy.
Stanford in the second round. That was Stanford's best team, so I was really disappointed for that. But they've never been to a Final Four. And I mean, those teams in the 70s: Anthony Murray, T.R. Dunn, Leon Douglas. 80s: Enos Watley, Bobby Lee Hurt, Buck Johnson. I mean, there was at some point, like late 90s, early thousands, they had more players in the NBA than any other school, more than North Carolina, more than Duke. I mean, they've just been a talent factory, and they've really recruited a ton from Memphis, which is, that's That's been a huge pipe. Birmingham and Memphis have been a huge college basketball pipeline for decades, and that was the honey. Those were the honey holes for Alabama, but they could never with good coaches. C.M. Newton was a great coach. Wimp Sanderson, a great coach. Godfrey was good when he was there. It just it's.
I still love Wimp Sanderson's name, Winifred E. Wimp Sanderson. Winifred. I mean, I think Buddy Martin's grandfather's name, or maybe Buddy's real name, isn't it, Brendan? Wilton. What is it, Buddy? Brendan. I'm trying to think, but I love the name.
Wilton Francis Martin II, and my mother had me C-section, and she woke up from her surgery, and she looked at my dad, and she says, "We're not naming him Wilton."
Hey, I think it was the 1983 season, Alabama. This was with Enos Watley and Bobby Lee Hurt, Buck Johnson. I mean, they were so good. They demolished UCLA at Pauley Pavilion. They demolished a Patrick Ewing Georgetown team, get in the tournament, lose in the first round to Lamar.
Yeah.
I mean, that's Alabama basketball 101.
Savant Friday is anytime we're together, anytime two or more of us together, including or Doug Dean's with us or whoever, it's a Savant Day. And where is Lamar located?
There he is.
Beaumont, Texas.
Texas.
Yeah, it's home of Janis Joplin and Jimmy Johnson.
Went the same high school.
And Babe Dickerson Saharis as well.
Jimmy Johnson, 5'8", but 6'2" with that whoop back hairdo he's got. Gotta love it. Doug B. Dean. Doug, I noticed on your text and in my contact now, it said Doug Dean. Now it's Doug B. Dean. Did I do that or did you do that?
No, I got victimized by the cyber attack geniuses somewhere around the globe, so I had to kill that old email address, and now I got my middle initial in it. Hey, I got a couple of.
I did not know that.
Let me help you.
Chinese.
Let me help you. Missed the first half hour. I've reduced it to cliff notes. Y'all ready? All right. So brace yourself, Duff. What we learned in the first half hour is that Pistol Pete Maravich was a very selfish player. He had
he had nobody else on the team.
You don't average 44 points a game with no 3 points without being selfish as hell. And what that means is if it were today, Pistol Pete on Bruce Pearl's team, he'd be limited to 20 minutes a game.
And don't forget, Caitlin Clark is leading both the men's and the women's in assists. So,
And before you finish, Doug, I got to tell you, I went to many a Jazz game in the mid-'70s as a high schooler and a junior high. And actually, the thing that I remember most about Pete Maravich as a pro was his passing ability. He was one of the greatest passers ever. I mean, I'm telling you, balls would come out of nowhere. Truck Robinson, Rich Kelly, Gail Goodrich. I mean, the passing that Pete Maravich did was more wide open shots than you would ever imagine in the Superdome back in the day.
Yeah, Duff, I've got your playbook. I knew you would take the bait and get all the bits.
I'm having a sense.
What was Truck Robinson's first name? That's a savant trivia question. What was Truck Robinson's first name? He wore number 21.
I would say, is it Robert? Richard?
Leonard
Truck
Robinson.
There we go.
Obviously, anybody seriously about Maravich doesn't know me very well. And secondly, I appreciate Dave saying, hey, this SEC thing, and all three of you, this thing is not over. It's not, don't coronate Tennessee or the winner of this Saturday. And I'll double down on that. What I'm rooting for, because I don't think Auburn has a chance of winning it outright. That would be a weird confluence of unexpected events. But there's more likely to be some sort of sharing of the regular season title. But there is a possibility, if you get into real of six-way tie.
Yeah.
The SEC.
Absolutely.
I'm rooting for that kind of chaos because, let's be honest, banner that regular season, but what we really care about is getting 8 teams in the tournament if we can.
Yeah. Doug, I'm going to ask you about in your takeaway from Auburn, Tennessee, you and I texted a little bit during the game, but I know you are myopically focused on there. I was proud of Auburn's effort. Dalton Connect's just a great player. Auburn didn't lose the game. Tennessee won that game, but Auburn will take a lot away from that, and I think they can win these next three, but again, one at a time.
Yeah, you know, you're asking for criticism that you try to silver linings in a loss. It was still a loss. We get that. But my whole speech this year is, and Jay Billis's, by the way, has been to try to urge myself and fellow SEC fans to quit experiencing basketball season like football. It is not football season. Billis, if we played the same number of games in football with 1 day to prepare, you'd have similar records, which is fascinating. You'd also have a hell of a lot of injuries in football. So to your point, Rob, Bruce, good coaches can look at a game like that and say, hey, we had our chances to win. Our defense let us down. But what really let this Auburn team down was turnover. I think 10 turnovers in the first half that were largely unforced errors, and Tennessee had something to do with that. So it's been this whole year, the theme has been good luck to you when you're going on the road. And that's nothing new in one sense, but it seems more severe pronounced this year. So Auburn, that was not that loss. That's a good quad one loss, if you can put it that way. If Auburn can win the next three, they're in fine shape. But as for Dalton Connect, and I don't know if Alabama has the defense or the particular players to do this, but I had a guy tell me, which made a lot of sense, and it'll probably anger some fans. Chris Moore is getting very few minutes. He could have been very useful. You need to goon Dalton Connect. You got to bang him around early. Get Chris Moore, get his requisite 5 fouls in the first half, and see if that changes the guy's, fascination with driving into the paint. But he is hell on wheels to deal with, and he's the best player in America, arguably, that no one ever heard of just a year ago.
You got to send out
talking about game coaches. I'll plug my old Mike Montgomery at Stanford. He was a tremendous game coach. At Stanford was so good for so long with inferior athletes. Really speaks to that. And one year one of the years we went to the Sweet 16. We played Tim Duncan his last game at Wake Forest in the second round, and Montgomery figured out that all you got to do is get Tim Duncan out of the game, and you win. That was our only. It's just like Zach Edey at Purdue.
That's all you got to do.
Yeah, and so what he did is he all of our big men. So he figured he has 6 big men, 5 fouls, so he's got 30 fouls to give, and they just beat the living bejesus out of Tim Duncan. I mean, it's just pounded.
And Tim Duncan hated that. He hated that.
He hated it, and Duncan just gave up, and we won by like 10 or 12 points. But that's what I mean. Game coaches, as the season goes on, they are working on their team playing their game better, but they also start thinking about how do we make the other team uncomfortable and take them out of their game. And that's in my opinion what great game coaches do.
And speaking of selfish players, I'm using a strong word just for entertainment value. I don't really mean it literally. But Dalton Connect, they are really utilizing him to the point where, and why not? Look what he's doing. But they may have a problem when they get into the Sweet 16 if they make it that far, and Tennessee should, for heaven's sake, with the seeding they'll get. But they might have a game where they really need to be more spread it around more, and they're not necessarily going to be comfortable doing that from habit.
I completely agree.
Here's a question for all of y'all. There's like a group of teams that even when they lose, they don't move much. They almost move up. UConn, Kansas, and Tennessee. I mean, it doesn't matter what happens. They're still there. Doug, I've asked this question to Frank and to Dave and Brendan earlier, but top to bottom, do you remember the SEC being this strong? I don't. Top to bottom in basketball.
The only cautionary word you have to add to that is there have been a few years where, it sure looked like teams couldn't deal with our top 3 or 4 teams. I'm obviously the most familiar with Auburn, but that Auburn team a couple of years ago with Walker Kessler and Jabari, you just could so easily convince yourself the way they ran through the regular season that nobody can touch us until at least 8, and that's where it gets dangerous. Like Dave was saying, there are coaches that know how to scheme and prepare a team for a particular game. And the minute they get an 8 or 10 point lead, then the team that's highly favored tightens up because it's March Madness. Maybe they're not used to being there all the time, or maybe they are used to being there all the time, like Kentucky. The fact that they're down the pressure, if that makes sense from a psychological standpoint.
I'd still like to have that replay against the Virginia game. I'd still like to see that.
Oh, you know, if you're talking about Auburn, Virginia, shoot. As far as I'm concerned, Auburn technically won that game.
No doubt.
Theoretically, Virginia could steal the inbound pass with 3 seconds left. It's just not very likely. Even if they do, they're throwing a prayer up. I don't know if Auburn could have beaten Texas Tech, but most people would have had Auburn pretty heavily favored in that game.
They would have been favored. Absolutely, they would have been favored.
I like this, Doug, and everybody here on this panel. When you look at the SEC guard play, the Florida guard play and Kentucky guard play, I think that's the best. Who after that really? Is it Tennessee with Zakai Ziegler, Mr. Assist? He's been there for 9 years. Santiago's been there for 11 years, but it's starting to stack up for Tennessee. A lot of experience and a lot of wins.
Yeah, and I'm not going to say RTR, but because it's against my religion. But
Namaste.
But you got to throw Mark Sears in there, and just because Alabama's trouble, getting very deep in the tournament doesn't mean they can't manage to do it this year. It's all about matchups. Yeah. But right now, I'm with you. Brendan's going to love this. Music to his ears. Go Gator. But I think Florida and Kentucky look to me like they're built with guard play. They're built and just elite, long, athletic talent. They're built to make deeper runs more than, honestly, than Auburn. I think Auburn's got 16 potential. That's all you have. And because you get to that point, you have to hit the refresh button, look at how teams have played, where they're going to play. Sometimes you get a 2 or 3 seed knocked out, so the opponent is suddenly more manageable, all kinds of stuff. You just have to completely do your bracket again at the Sweet 16.
And by the way, Doc, I caught that shot. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. The Gators don't take no jive.
Hey, here's one for you, and bounce it around. Look at the job. I mean, we're here in Oxford. Ole Miss started off strong, and Shoney's making a comment. They looked good until Christmas due to scheduling muffins. They got into the SEC. They've won. I think they've won 6 games. But talk about the job Chris Beard has done. He inherited. Kermit Davis was there 5 or 6 years. Everybody knows he can coach, but he didn't get it done at Ole Miss. And now Chris Beard comes in, and he's going to be mentioned for other jobs. Do y'all think he stays at Ole Miss to finish what he has started? Because he's bringing in recruiting-wise, and forget just about high school. He'll go out in the portal, but the guy has won big everywhere he's been.
I think he stays. He's got to have redemption. The way it ended so ugly at Texas. I think he stays, and I think he wants to get Ole Miss to at least a Sweet 16, and then I think he's likely to go somewhere else.
Yeah, Doug.
I don't know. I'll yield to Dave on that one.
Frank.
Well, I don't know about that. I just know one thing. When they came into the Deaf Dome about a month ago, we handed it to them, and it only got close late. I think Ole Miss has some flaws in their game. I think they do, and especially when you get in tournament time, if you're not playing good defense, and I think that's where they're kind of suspect. I mean, we hung up a lot of points on them.
Yeah,
I think you got to have that to make it deep in the tournament. I think they might be a one and done in the SEC.
Yeah,
I agree with that. I don't think I'm thinking about next year and the year after.
Yeah,
I think this year, no, they don't have a good squad. I think he'll recruit well. I think he'll leverage the portal well, like his brethren in the football program, Lane. And I think either next year or the year after they'll make a run, and then I think after that he'll go somewhere else.
Yeah.
Doug Dean, I got to ask you, Doug. In your opinion, this Auburn team, and you know that roster, and Jason Caldwell said Auburn undercover on here a number of times. Who are the NBA stars on this team? I mean, they're going to be players that go play in the NBA. I absolutely believe there are, but this is a close-knit, those 11 guys that play a lot. Compare them to some of Bruce Pearl's other teams at this point late in the season.
Yeah, I mean, we all love to talk about how powerful teamwork is, and there comes a point most of the time in athletics where there needs to be at least one or two truly elite players. You know, it can be but I will say, if you're talking about the possibilities, not so much of the Final Four, that's awfully hard to get to. There's a reason in the state of Alabama only one team on one occasion has ever made the Final Four, and you know the 2019 season. So I think Bruce, if he can make the Elite Eight, really even the Sweet 16, he will have done so with arguably his least individually star-studded team, but possibly his best total team in terms of how they work together. And that's really what basketball is all about. Now, they do play some ferocious defense, not as much the other night, but Tennessee had a lot to do with that. So we shall see. I did want to insert, Rob, I can't believe none of you have commented on my new hat. It says Barner. I've embraced my Barner.
Hey, and if we're confessing, I want to make sure everybody realizes this is an Atlanta Braves shirt.
Right.
There is no.
Dave.
It's hard to see. There is no mullet on the top of the head.
Yeah. Well, I thought maybe Dave had sent that to you.
I'd send it to him. Yeah.
Real quick, Duff, you and Dave have inspired me to look into investing in thoroughbred horses.
Oh, don't do it. Trust me.
I'm not. I haven't pulled the trigger yet, but I'm looking at one. The name kind of concerns me. Elmer's Gambit, and as in Elmer's Glue. $95. It's a real bargain. I think it'd be a bargain.
Hey man, I'm looking forward to Sunday. Our Philly's going for her third time. You know what they say? Third time's a charm. We're hoping to break our maiden. We're hoping to get out there. Look, it's a fun industry. Dave will tell you it's exciting. Don't get into it for the money. You get into it for the passion. Your money's better spent, going outside and starting a forest fire with it. It's better use.
I just feel like y'all on me.
If you want to get into the industry, number one criteria should be love. Number two criteria should be glory. And then a very distant third is business.
Yeah. Correct.
Yeah. And me going to the Derby.
And you going to the Derby.
Hey, let's go, man.
I've never been to the Derby.
Start tomorrow. So Derby season officially begins tomorrow.
Guys, it's the 150th. It is a big Derby. I've been to probably 15, 16 Derbies. We went last year. I brought a big group. Me and 5 buddies went, had a blast. I normally go with a lot of my Dallas lawyer friends. This year is going to be very special. I can't go. My daughter's graduating college. I have to put my priorities in place. But we are already planning the trip for next year. In fact, we literally were texting it today. Being in Lexington on Derby weekend is one of the funnest experiences you'll ever have. Walking into Jack Fry or Ruby's Steakhouse and seeing the who's who of sports celebrities and having a big, thick steak and 2 or 3 bourbons with big cubes. It's one of the best weekends ever.
I mean, I'm perfect for that.
Yeah, exactly.
Why am I not? 50, I've been to every other great sporting event, all of them. I've never.
It's a bucket list.
Well,
I got to ask this one. That poll, I'll beat you there.
We'll so next time I'm on the show, we'll talk about the Derby prep season coming up and Derby 150.
Who is it that talks about the bacon and bourbon that they have now? Doug Dean, was that you?
No.
But that's a new thing now is bacon flavored bourbon or bacon. People put bacon strips in the bourbon.
Yeah.
Where was that? I mean, I know I hadn't had my coffee yet, but anyway, I think also, Dave, is this true or Doug, maybe someone knows. I talked to Greg Williams, the equestrian coach, who's won like 10 national championships at Auburn. And he was telling me that all the horses for equestrian are donated. So anyone listening, watching, whatever, if you have a horse, you'd like to have it donated to a great home, you can get it and you get a significant tax advantage for doing that. Just think about that. If you've got a horse, Frank, Dave, you know any horses that need a home?
I'll tell you in about 2 months.
Yeah. Oh my God, that's bad.
Let me see if I can.
Everyone knows about Churchill Downs in Louisville and Keeneland and Lexington, but I tell you, the real horse country is where Brendan lives. That's down in Ocala.
Yeah, Ocala. Great sale, great breeding down there. It's in the limestone, in the soil down there. It's just like Lexington.
And the weather.
Doug, I would be remiss if we did not say something real quick here about what's going on as well, the NCAA. Doug, you're a great writer. You're a great thinker. Is the NCAA now, are they getting flowers? Looking at a tombstone, is it over for the NCAA? Is this March Madness? Are they gonna privatize that? Is that gonna be venture capital? Someone else will own it. They'll completely go away, or will they hang on for that?
Well, all I can say is I bet I was not alone across the SEC, especially really nationwide, in feeling gleeful, giddy to actually see a document issued by a court with a restraining order on the NCAA. A restraining order.
Love it.
Their last act of defiance against Tennessee and was it Virginia, 2 programs, and they said, all right, you want to lawyer up NCAA? Come on, because the NCAA is running out of friends in the media. Let me correct myself there. They have no friends in the media that I can find, and they have almost no friends across the conference governance and power structure. So, I think we're inside of that. We no longer, it's the dope bird. You no longer have an NCAA institution as we know it. And frankly, they stopped being objective and fair on enforcement about 20 years ago. You do the math.
Yeah, I would agree with that.
I mean, I said it on a previous show. If I were the NCAA right now, I would just say, okay, look, we'll give us exclusive rights to put on men's and women's March Madness, and then whatever the process is for everything else, we're going to graciously withdraw from any other role in sports, but we'll keep March Madness for men's and women's, and then just walk away quietly. That's if I were as NCAA leadership, that's what I would do.
But now what I want to know, though, is without the NCAA to run Jim Harbaugh out of coaching at Michigan, what is Ohio State going to do, Frank?
Like I worry about recruiting because Michigan has that national championship, even with the 4 infractions, right?
Yes. Well, alleged infractions. I'm a
right.
big Harbaugh guy. You got to love a guy that wears white socks. He tucks in his sweatshirt and he wears those birth control glasses. I mean, the guy's a hell of a coach. And I hate that
he got out of town quick. I think he knows the posse's right behind him.
All right, I'm going to bounce this one around. Start with Doug. Give me your SEC teams. There could be 1 or 2 or 3 that you think are going to go the farthest in the NCAA tournament.
Talking about March Madness or the 12th playoff?
Yeah. No, March Madness.
Oh, March Madness. Not going to be it's bad mojo to be a homer answering that. I mean, Auburn is frankly already got, and we're sitting at 5th in the Ken Pom rankings, which is real metrics. It's not, somebody's declaration that just because I like Kansas, I'm going to always keep them 1 seed. It's ridiculous. So I think Tennessee is due. You said it earlier. The Vols fans have a little PTSD about March Madness under Barnes, but they really do have a lot of parts that can take them far, including good guard play and connect. God, how tall is that guy to be a guard?
Yeah.
So you got to have them in there. I don't want to discount Alabama, especially if they win this Saturday and they're sitting ready to win the regular season. We'll have to see what the matchups are. We've already talked about Florida and Kentucky as teams that, they might be 6, 7, or 8, but they're good enough that won't matter. If they get past game one, then they're probably facing a manageable opponent after that, maybe. So, and then Auburn will be in there somewhere. I want to see the bracket to answer your question with anything, held to me, because I know that you archive this show. Words.
And I'm going for the money play in my trifecta. I want Auburn, Florida, and Kentucky. I think that's like the third, fourth, and fifth horses on the tote board. And I think they might hit. And if they hit, you can make a good bit of money. I am shocked that Auburn is at the number of 24-1.
I think
what? Final four?
Yeah, Final Four.
Okay. Yeah.
Wow.
I think Kentucky has the greatest probability of making it to the Final Four of a team from the SEC. I also think if they draw a Princeton or a Colgate or someone like that in a 5-12 in the first round, they good chance they'll get beat. I think Tennessee's upside is the Elite Eight. I think if they can maybe get to the Elite Eight, but I don't think they go to the Final Four. Then the Rick Barnes thing happens again. I think this could be a special year for Bruce Pearl with this team. It's a Bruce Pearl kind of team. I think their chances are less than Kentucky to get to the Final Four, but one never knows. Florida with their guard play, I think they're gonna beat some. They're gonna pull off some wins, and perhaps get to the Sweet 16. I think Alabama will blow some teams out, and this is their year, and then we'll run into a good game coach and get bounced.
Yeah, we just got a couple of minutes left before we wrap it up on this Friday, and we're not going to get. We could do football for the rest of the day. There's so much going on, but unbelievable. Brendan Martin, this is a lot of fun. We're at the Vitamin Shoppe, new location in Oxford, Mississippi, in the Oxford Galleria, right next to Dick's Sporting Goods. You can't miss it. Hours of operation, they're open Monday through Saturday, 9:30 in the morning till 8 at night, and Sundays, 10:30 in the morning till 7 p.m. We'll get everybody back together and do this again one day next week, because people say this is a slow time of year. Not if you follow Doug Dean, Frank Duffy, Dave Tompkins, Brendan Martin, and me. There is a lot to cover. And I'm going to tell you what, to clarify this, we live in the greatest country in the history of the world. We got the best sponsors, the best guests. Go out and bless others with all your great things you got going on. But somebody tell me, does race season start at Oak Lawn this weekend over in Hot Springs, Arkansas?
No, they've been racing. They've been racing a while, but the Arkansas Derby's coming up. It's one of the first ones in the prep.
Yeah, okay. I think the Arkansas Derby's either in 2 weeks or 3 weeks.
Yeah.
Okay. All right.
And Rob, we had a comment in the chat room from Cat Fan, who was trying to tell me that Kentucky horse capital of the world, and I have to argue with him, because I'm pretty sure there's a sign where I live that tells me that we are actually
there you go. There you go.
The world. So therefore, no, Cat Fan, you
I've seen that sign.
Yeah, and it's all over town, and they are not considered horse capital of the world. So just so you know, Cat Fan, put that in your pop, your corn cob pipe and smoke it. Thank you.
Doug Dean, Doug has something to say.
Rob, real quick, and I know it's on everybody's minds and hearts, but we're except on game day, a fraternity across the Southeastern Conference, and
Georgia.
Our prayers and sympathy to the Georgia fan base at the tragic end of Lake and Riley. And
unreal.
I won't get into the politics of it all, but just really keeping the whole Georgia fan base and alumni, that community, in our thoughts and prayers.
Yeah, and we are blessed to have one of our sponsors, Nashville Anti-Human Trafficking Coalition, and you'll hear the commercial at the end of the show. Serious business. I'm with Doug. The SEC, and we're bringing in 2 new family members, Texas and Oklahoma. Folks, if you think this is fun, it's about to get really fun, and we're going to do this again next week, getting the band together like this. Brendan, it's addictive. It is fun. We're going to say goodbye from the Vitamin Shoppe in Oxford, Mississippi. They open in about 30 minutes. Get out here today, because You're going to see a ton of Ole Miss football players out here at the Oxford Galleria. Folks, have a great weekend. We'll see you Monday morning. We're out of here. Everybody wave goodbye.
Bye.
Bye.
In a perfect world, you'd set a health goal and results would happen overnight. In this world, the real world, it takes time, dedication, and the right support to achieve your best self. The Vitamin Shoppe's health enthusiasts are here to make sure you're not wasting a single moment on the wrong supplements. From the highest quality sports nutrition and superfoods to the most sought after trends, you'll find a huge variety of science-backed solutions for every goal. And the people to help guide you along the path to greatness.
Unbelievably, every 2 minutes in our communities, a child is either bought or sold for sex. I am Ari Dickey, board member for the Nashville Anti-Human Trafficking Coalition. Join me and millions of others in our fight against human trafficking and for its victims by helping to educate the most vulnerable among us, our middle and high school students. Go to nhtcoalition.org, become a partner, and help keep our families safe, because none of God's children are for sale.